Welcome, Impactful Parents! It's time for the Impactful Parenting Podcast, where I give you parenting tips and resources to make you a more impactful parent to your school-age child. I am your host, Kristina Campos. Welcome, Impactful Parents. Today we're going to talk about how bored teenage boys can spiral into loneliness and then become one of the scariest people of the future. Hello, my name is Kristina Campos. I'm founder of The Impactful Parent, and I help parents of school-age children who want to stay one step ahead of their kids to turn their chaos into connection with their adolescent. I'm a mom of 4, a teacher that has taught every grade from preschool through high school, and today I help moms and dads like yourself to navigate the exhausting, confusing, frustrating, and rewarding world of parenting. So welcome to The Impactful Parent. Today I also have my co-host with me, Rodrigo Bravo. Rodrigo is a co-parenting mediator out of the state of Texas. He's a parenting coach, and he is a dad of 2 boys. Rodrigo brings a dad's perspective onto the Impactful Parent stage to give you even more expertise and an added perspective to our parenting topics. I'm excited to talk about this today because it's all about young boys who isolate themselves and spiral into something that's no good. So I saw this video accusing bored teenage boys as being the scariest people in the world. And I wanted to show the audience this video right away because this guy may be right, depending on your view. So I'm going to roll the tape now.
The most dangerous person in the world, we're producing millions of them, and that is a lonely, young, broke male. The number of high school teenagers that sees their friends every day has been cut in half, that we're slowly but surely sequestering from each other. And when we do that, we become less mammalia. If you have dogs are happiest when they're lying on top of you. The worst thing you can do to a dog is leave it alone all day. And what we're doing to young people is they are leaving others and themselves alone all day. We're separating from each other. We're becoming less social. And there's a group of men who aren't received well at school, don't find a source of pride. Auto shop, metal shop, wood shop's gone away. They go online to date. The majority of them get rejected. If your average attractiveness in online dating, you have to swipe right 200 times to get a single coffee. If you set up 5 coffees, you'll get 1 will actually show up. 4 of the 5 will ghost you and decide later on they don't actually want to meet up. So a young man of average attractiveness in online dating has to swipe right 1,000 times. So he gets validation for 1 coffee. He gets validation that he has no worth to the other sex. He loses confidence. He starts engaging with people because he has less opportunities for random encounters where he has to develop those skills. And slowly but surely he sequesters from society. And at some point, he just is not really savable. He just never develops those skills around friendship or romantic relationships. In the United States, 1 in 7 men doesn't have a single friend. 1 in 4 can't name a best friend. In addition, marriage has become now a luxury item. If you're in the upper quartile of income-earning households, there's a 3 in 4 chance you're going to get married. If you're in the lower quartile, there's a 3 in 4 chance you will never get married.
Now, the first thing the video says is that young, bored boys are the scariest people in the world. And when I saw the caption of the video, and just the caption only, before I even started watching the video, I remembered the 2 of us talking about statistics of school shooters. And these shooters are usually young men. In addition, we have talked about red pill and blue pill culture before. And if you don't know what red pill and blue pill culture is, for the audience, I'm sure we're going to discuss a little bit about it today. But really check out episode 171, so 171, and I'll leave a YouTube link down in the show notes because that's going to explain the red pill, blue pill culture a lot more in depth. And again, troubling statistics about how young, bored teenage boys are being influenced into these really unproductive, bad social circles. And so that was my first thoughts when I saw this video. And I was like, oh man, we haven't talked about that in a while. And I just really wanted to get your take on it. What were your initial thoughts when you saw the video?
Yeah, so I think one of the common themes when it comes to these types of videos is kind of a victimhood. I particularly don't subscribe to this train of thoughts. First of all, let's get down to what he's talking about. Statistics, right? I love statistics. I think, when we talk about statistics and we talk about real data, it needs to be supported. I like to see the sources. We've talked about several issues where we refer to statistics, and I always mention the source. We always talk about where the source is from and so forth. We even question the sources sometimes, right? Like, where does it
we
come
do.
from, et cetera. So, but that's good. In this particular video, I didn't hear any like sources. It's just things that he quoted. And he started saying like 50% this, and 1 out of 4 coffees. And then, so a lot of stats were thrown out. I don't know where he gets that info from. If I could find out where it's from, maybe I'd give it a little bit more credence. But what really kind of struck me is and you asked me what my initial impressions were, the references to dogs. So there's this type of kind of in the manosphere, right, where they talk about like alpha males, beta males, and leaders of the pack, and you see these references to nature a lot of times, to animals and so forth, right? In this case, he says like, hey, what happens to a dog? When the dogs are together, they lay on top of each other, right? But what do? You leave a dog alone all day, it's sad and this and that. We're not dogs. We're just not dogs. And dogs have a totally different environment and a totally different social dynamic within themselves, within, other dogs and so forth. And the dynamic between a person and a dog is completely different. I know that a lot of folks try to make these comparisons, but the most famous example is that of the wolf, right? The alpha leader of the wolf. And a lot of people don't understand that particular study actually didn't say that there's an alpha wolf. What it was saying was that, the leader of the pack is generally the father. The wolves typically travel in families. So for example, we have a family, right? Let's just take the nuclear family, right? Who's going to be the leader in that house? It's not going to be the 17-year-old kid. Okay. It's not going to be the 8-year-old daughter. It's going to be the guy and the lady, and it says in that study that the mom and the dad are the leaders of that pack. But people tend to say, oh, it's the alpha wolf. He's the one that grew from the pack and this and that. So there's that misconception. And I can go further and further. There's actually some great podcast episodes about that. Maybe we can link them down. But the whole point is this: when we make those kind of comparisons, we really are making an apples to oranges comparison. There's very few natural behaviors among animals that really kind of correspond with human behaviors. We don't eat out of bowls. We don't walk around naked like dogs. I mean, well, some people put clothes on their dogs, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think maybe Kristina, you put clothes on your dogs before, right? I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I did.
Yeah, I did. So but there's nothing wrong with that, right? But for the most part, right? Dogs are naked, right? Pets are naked. We don't walk around naked. Okay. Does that mean that we're, anti-nature, or we're going against our natural instincts of walking around with our things, flopping around? And no, we're not that way. We don't go around sniffing yards and sniffing other people's butts. I mean, we're not dogs. So anyways, I'm harping on this particular point because if he's willing to make that comparison, I almost feel like the other numbers he showed are probably not well researched either, and are just kind of haphazardly thrown out there, or maybe guesses on his part. And I think that's dangerous when we do that, when we kind of mix real data with conjectures. I want to know what the sources are. He talked about the Tinder dates and like the swipes and this and that. I think I've heard statistics on that may or may not be the same. I can't recall off the top of my head. But the whole point of the matter is, when I heard all that, I heard a lot of numbers and a lot of things to uphold his thought process on the loneliness of males.
Well, I wasn't too sure about what he was saying exactly with his numbers because, yeah, there's no reference to them. I will say that I agree with some things that he's saying in that, oh, yeah, that's my experience too. So I can agree with that. For example, I feel like the ghosting culture of today is rampant. I mean, and so like there's it's like accepted even. If you don't want to deal with somebody or you just don't you lose interest in them, people ghost. And I feel like that's, it's a cop out. I feel like it's not something that I typically want to subscribe to, but I will say that society has kind of made it an acceptance thing. Like, oh, they just ghosted me and you're not supposed to get your feelings hurt. And that just happens. I do feel like not that lonely, bored boys are the scariest person. I don't think maybe that's true, but I do think there's an epidemic of our kids, boys or girls, but our boys not, I don't know. It seems like they're really discouraged nowadays. I don't, and it's a tribute to all of the things that society has changed to. And I feel bad for our youth of today in a lot of different ways. Of course, they also have great advantages that I never had. So there's always a balance. But those are the things that kind of went through my head was what part of this, I want to pick it out with Rodrigo. What part of this video is true and not true? What do we think? And that's exactly why I wanted to bring it to the table.
Well, I think first of all, what you said was I tend to agree with the fact that we are being conditioned to accept certain behaviors, like ghosting, like people being too aggressive, people being having to change certain things. I also feel that some of these changes have come about because people have changed in general, and there's also kind of a liberty that's being offered that maybe wasn't offered before. And what I mean by that is really women have better choices, more choices, and I think that's a good thing. Let's take, for example, like back in the day, back in the past, women a lot of times were confined to the town that they were in, right? Or whatever. And maybe there wasn't like a great selection, but they had to choose, and they had, and now it's expanded where maybe you're a single guy in this town, but you're not really that great. You haven't really worked on yourself. You haven't done things to really improve your lot. And now you're being overlooked. I think that's a good thing. I think that really kind of challenges folks to like, hey, if you really are aspiring for something, you need to work towards that. Will you get overlooked? Yeah, I mean, I've been on the receiving end of that where I get overlooked, and okay, it is what it is. I've also been on the other side where I had to kind of say like, yeah, not interested or this and that. So I think the proliferation of apps, the ability to now kind of expand that horizon to include other people does mean that our options have really gone up. I also think that behaviors from the past are no longer accepted, and I think that's one of the things that really irks men, certain men.
And what
That
behaviors are you talking about?
Oh, you know what behaviors I'm talking about. I'm talking about behaviors that are kind of archaic, that are old. I don't want to say old school because then I'm disrespecting old school, but archaic, that are misogynistic, that are patriarchal. That, hey, I gotta, you should, live at home and this and that, and oh, you should, you shouldn't have that many sexual partners throughout your life. Oh, you should act a certain way. You shouldn't wear this. You shouldn't do that. That's just old school thinking, and look, there are women that appreciate that still. You just got to find them, but for you to impose your values and your mindset on other women like that, when a majority of them don't want to follow that, they, hey, if I want to be with somebody, I'm going to be with somebody. If I want to wear something, I want to wear something, they're free to do that. And I think a lot of folks, with the easing of societal norms, in the sense of like, what was it like? I mean, not even 50 years ago, women couldn't wear pantsuits, I think, and or they weren't supposed to. Oh my God, bikinis, I mean, come on, there was a time like 100 years ago, women wouldn't go to the beach and they'd be fully clothed and all kinds of stuff, and I don't know what guys expect. Men have had time to kind of evolve into what we're doing, right, through the years and so forth, through centuries. And women now have just experienced these type of freedoms barely in the last 100 years. Women couldn't even vote 100 years ago. I think it's about 100 years ago that women's suffrage occurred. They couldn't even vote at that time. And they couldn't even you couldn't even own land. You couldn't do all kinds of things. And so women experiencing this freedom now has kind of caught up, or is catching up. And men are over here freaking out like, hey, what, and holding on to these traditional views that just aren't accepted, that just, women don't have to put up with. So my whole point is this: if you're thinking this way, don't be surprised when a lot of women don't think that way, because that's just an old school way of thinking, and I would venture to say that a lot of men that are thinking like, that are in this type of quote unquote lonely men or lonely kids, do have a tendency to think that way. Like things should be the way they were back in the day and this and that. And it's simply not true. It's just not going to work that way anymore, where men have the choosing of their lot, or whatever. And then they could just do whatever they want while women kind of follow them along.
Now, in the video, he kind of alludes that a lot of this demise of the young men being so lonely and isolated has to do with technology, and that we're not encouraging our kids to get out and be interactive and talk to each other anymore and all those things. That's what he's alluding to. He doesn't really come out right and say it in the video, but that's the impression I get when I listen to it, that he's blaming technology for these sad, lonely men. But I hear you saying, well, yeah, but it's more that things have changed, and there's some boys that are just kind of stuck in not allowing, like not evolving along. So am I right about that? Or
Well, I think, I think he's making some observations that are anecdotal, because I can make the same observations about my youngest son, who probably spends an inordinate amount of time gaming and playing and this and that. He has a girlfriend. He has healthy relationships. He has a best friend, Chris, who's also online. They have never met, yet they are on a 4.5-year friendship now. And I'll even tell you this: it was maybe about 3 weeks ago. Sam came out of his room and said, "Hey, man, hey, dad, guess what?" I go, "What?" Because Chris is getting married. I said, "No kidding." He's like, "Yeah. You think we can go to his wedding ceremony?" I said, "Yeah, wherever it is, we'll go. I promise." He's like, "Oh," and he goes, "You hear that, man?" And no. So I think, and maybe that's anecdotal too. Maybe that's it's an outlier or whatever. But I think the technology has evolved. But I'm also not going to be one that says like, "Hey, we should stick to horses." Why this? What's going to happen to all the horses? And what about all the blacksmiths that work, that do the horseshoe repair? And what about all the equine farms? Come on, technology is meant to help us, and it is going to create different ways of communicating, different ways of doing things, and it's going to change society. I don't think that our phones, our computers. I mean, look, we're doing a podcast right now. Is that something that we should be like? No, we should be in person. And how are we going to grow an organic relationship if we don't meet together? And look at this. But no, it's actually good. We have this podcast because of technology. You're in the Midwest. I'm here in the down south. Mm-hmm. But we found each other and we said like, hey, we have common goals. Let's work together, to really help parents out there, I don't see anything wrong with that. And I don't see anything wrong with communicating via technology. I just looked it up right now. Kristina, I'm going to ask you, what's the percentage of relationships that end up in marriage or engagement from Tinder?
From Tinder?
Yes.
Marriages.
Tinder. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. What would you put the
you have to,
percentage at?
I mean, you have to take in context the platform and what the platform is intention for, which is dating, but
Yes.
not that kind of dating. Like not forever dating. Tinder is not a forever dating site like eHarmony, which would be more considered a forever dating type of site. Like you're supposed to find a. So I don't know. My guess is, not very many, but it does happen on occasion. 1 in 20? I don't know.
So 5%. So 5%. You're going for 5%.
It's probably been less than 5% though. Yeah. Probably more
Okay.
like than 1 in no.
So according to research done and shared on a Shane Company article from respondents, 30% of respondents say they were engaged or married to a partner they met on Tinder. Yes.
30%.
30%, Kristina.
I have a hard time believing that.
It's from respondents. I mean, I can, if you want me to look into it a little bit more, I can definitely, talk about it. It goes on. It says Bumble and Hinge came in second and third with a 12.9%.
But it's interesting what you're saying here, because basically what you're saying, you're taking a stance of don't blame the technology. The technology is, it could be a tool for the same kid that's lonely, that he's choosing to use technology in a way that isolates him versus how we, even right now, as we record this podcast, choose to use technology in a way that connects us. I mean, and we are a good example of a friendship that I have met you once in my entire life in person. And just because you happen to come to Colorado, and that's sad, but I still feel like you are a good friend. Like we talk,
yes. And I'm going to go to Colorado soon. Okay. I promise you. Okay. But yes, I agree with that.
I need to go to Texas, to be honest. I haven't been in years. So, but I see what you're saying. You're just saying don't blame the technology, right?
Yeah. And I want to make one last point on that, and then we'll move on. But it says right here, the Knott's 2023 Jewelry and Engagement Study. So they take responses from people that come into the store to buy engagement rings and so forth. They found that Tinder was responsible for 25% of engaged and newly married couples. So that's pretty much in line, 25 to 30%. That's pretty close. It's not, so I think you could say fairly that 25 to 30% of folks that do get engaged or get married right now have done so because of Tinder. That's two good studies right there that show that people are getting partnerships, and not just short-term partnerships, because again, that's what the video is really kind of focusing on, right? That you're swiping and you're doing this and you do 200 swipes and you get ghosted and then you get for coffee and Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, that might be true, but that might be something that's wrong with you, because apparently 3 out of 10 people on Tinder are actually going all the way to engagement or marriage, which is pretty far, and I'm going to tell you this. I mean, if I had to put, if I had to put the number of dates I've been on in my life and how many actually led to like a marriage, it's a much less number than that. I mean, I'm not trying to get married with every date either, right? But I mean, that's a pretty good ratio right there, 30%. I'm not really mad at that. I think that's and it's very mind blowing to me. Okay. That's why I asked you the question first. But going back to what he's talking about, I think a lot of it does have to do with how you are presenting yourself. If you choose to be lonely, if you choose to not engage, and if this technology is there. So even though the technology is there for you to become lonely, the technology is also there for you not to become lonely. And if you're over here swiping and you don't get the results that you want, I would probably venture to say you probably got a really boring ass profile. Okay, I'm just gonna be straight up honest with you. You know, and when I've been on there, so oh my god, I can't believe I'm gonna share this, but I am. Okay, so back in 2020 or so, you know, I had 2000, it was 2020 January, that month, right? In December 2019, you know, I went through a breakup, and I said, you know what, you know, f this, I'm gonna go on Twitter. I mean Twitter, Tinder.
Tinder.
Yes, I'm gonna go. I said, okay, I'm gonna go on Tinder. I also did a Bumble account, and I put up a profile and I did my thing, right? And I got plenty of hits. I got plenty, and I'm not saying like I'm a great looking guy or like this and that, but I got to be honest with you. When I put up my profile, I put it in Word and Google Docs first. I wrote it out there.
It was
spelling
thoughtful.
check. Exactly. It was intentional. And I really went out of my way to show like who I am. So I added some funny stuff, and I added some like very unique things about me, endearing things, pictures that were just like showed me, you know, all that stuff, right? Family members, blah, 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 friends. And I got a lot of hits. And I feel that it wasn't hard in the sense of like, I didn't have to like struggle for that. And why? Because it was thoughtful, it was intentional, and I did it in a way like, hey, my purpose here is to find somebody. So why am I not gonna like put something out there that's gonna like really show who I am? If you put on your Tinder profile like love to hang out, you know, I enjoy pizza, you know, check me out, you know, let's have a good time. Come on, like nobody's gonna like that. Nobody, you know, if you put up some picture that is terrible looking, or you didn't take the time to like, yeah, come on. Like who doesn't have a little thing? Use some books and put the camera the right angle and everything, and take a nice picture of yourself, you know, shave, you know,
We know a guy for that, actually.
Oh yes, Herman. He
We
will
do.
teach you how
Yes,
to
we
do
do.
that. Yes.
We have a mutual friend, Rodrigo and I, that if you need it, maybe I'll put his information down in the show notes. We'll shout him out right now. He actually does that for a living. He takes
does.
pictures so that for dating sites, so that you can make a really good first impression. Yeah.
And I think that's the whole point. Like you're making a first impression. And if you're not really hitting people with that first impression, I really feel like it's maybe a little bit more about that. You know,
Okay.
and
But
that's what I think. I don't know.
okay, but there is an epidemic of these lonely boys, and they're young boys. And they're just kind of isolating themselves, and it's really bad for their mental health. They're spiraling, you know, through these. They're focusing more on all those negatives instead of the positive. They're doing that. So whether we like it or not, this is actually, we got these set of lonely boys out there who are going out into the world, and they're either becoming influenced by the red pill, blue pill culture, where, just briefly, that's this culture where a lot of misogynistic men are choosing to say, hey, it's not us, it's them, it's the women. The women are, they only want like the cream of the crop. They're only picking the best men. And they're, you know, it's not you that has the issue. It's her. She's not having good expectations. And well, anyway, they're bringing women. So they're either getting swooped up into that mentality, or they're becoming lonely for a long time, or they become so lonely and depressed through this process because there is no connection, and they kind of wallow in it, that eventually something really bad happens where they take action. And this is where we're talking a little bit about where I mentioned in the beginning, are most of our school shooters are young, male, lonely boys. So this is actually an epidemic, though. So if you can't like shake each little lonely boy's shoulders and say, wake up and come on, use the same technology for good instead of for evil, you know, what do you say to that, Rodrigo? What do you say to these young lonely boys that don't have the motivation to go out there and, you know, step up their game? Really is what you're saying. They're not stepping up their game.
Well, here's the thing. You know, growth takes effort. Growth takes really a desire to change. And when you explore the world of incels, red pill, blue pill culture, and so forth, they are basically saying like, hey, it's okay to be who you are. And the ideas that you express are okay. It's the women or the other folks that you're trying to attract that are the problem. And I think that's a really easy way to like not grow, not
Yeah.
do the work that you need to do, not heal. I know that, when I was going through my mental wellness journey, before that, I always felt like there was probably something wrong with the folks around me. It was my dad, and my ex doesn't understand me because she did this and that, and maybe part of it was true, maybe it wasn't, but I just wasn't taking accountability for myself. And once you take, kind of a pro growth, pro healing kind of stance, you end up realizing that, yeah, some of it may be your ex's fault, may be your dad's fault or family or whatever the case may be. But also, you bear responsibility for that. You should be accountable to heal from that. Just because you're, broken or you're hurt or whatever, doesn't give you the right to hurt others or to continue being hurt. You should really kind of focus on making sure that you do what you got to do to really grow. Back in the days, we kind of accepted that, right? Especially among men, that like, hey, toughen up and do this and that. What happens when you toughen up? What happens when you are quote unquote masculine back in the day? You tend to lash out on the people that you love. It may be reflected on, lack of emotional support, a coldness. It may even turn into violence where you're, actually domestic, the violence or there's fighting there or whatever the case may be. I think a lot of times when it comes to this incel culture, our kids are really kind of getting sucked into it because it's an easy way to go through life, to say that everybody else is in trouble or at fault. Society is what's wrong. We're becoming too quote unquote woke, that we are doing too many things at the same time. Women are losing their way. They're no longer the prize. They're out here doing this and that. They're not the traditional. It's all BS. At the end of the day, if you like a certain type of woman, go for that. There are women out there that want to live a quote unquote traditional way where they want to be at home with the kids, where they want to just, not have a job. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with it is when men particularly try to force a woman to have those choices. Like, no, you shouldn't be working. No, you shouldn't do this. You do this and that. It's kind of interesting how that whole kind of idea and mentality of bettering yourself has really kind of risen among other folks, but not within these men, not within, these young boys, and especially not within this incel culture where, even if they have a good job, then that's it. They're worth it. No, it takes a little bit more than just money now to be quote unquote attractive to folks. To especially obviously you and I are speaking from the heteronormative point of view, right? Because we're heterosexual, but in this case, I guess what I'm saying is really whoever you're trying to attract, it takes a little bit more than just maybe having a good job, more than having quote unquote good genes or whatever. It's just gonna take a lot more than that.
So we need to encourage our boys to stop wallowing and start moving, is what I'm hearing you say. Like stop blaming everybody else for your problems and start picking yourself by your bootstraps. Because if you put in some effort, I hear you saying like you're gonna find a person and you're gonna, find your way, and all of that's gonna make you happier, so that you're not, stuck in the spiral of sadness and isolation, which is so easy to do. It's so much easier to only put your social media feed in things that validate the way your viewpoints. That's so easy. So I can see how boys are so easily persuaded by these cultures are saying, it's not you, it's them, because you want to hear that. You don't want to believe it's you ever. Like,
Yeah, nobody does. Yeah.
nobody does. So, but you're saying, yeah, stop blaming the technology, and we got to encourage our boys to be better and to stop wallowing. That's what
Yeah. And I would say this, as parents, we got to understand that things are changing. If you want your kids to have good social skills, then you got to teach them that. You do have to teach them, give them those soft skills that maybe they won't be able to learn from, interactions that happen online. So for example, shaking hands, saying nice, being polite, things like that. My boys, I have two boys, they're 22 and 20. They are the first ones to say hi and shake hands and look people directly in the eye and this and that. I taught them that, right? You'll be surprised how many people don't have those soft skills.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of young kids, young kids that look at me and they'll call me bro from the beginning. Now, I'm not like one about hierarchies and all that, but I'm not a bro
You're not
anymore.
a bro.
Okay, look at my beard. Okay, let's just be honest. All right, I'm not broing it too much. Now, if you're my age, then we could bro it up, right? But when you're that young, and I don't expect to be called sir either, but just a little bit of a modicum of respect. That's it. Just let's start this off the right way.
And
And
that
it's
is
really
a
just
parent's responsibility. So
it
you're
is.
absolutely right. And I have an example too. My third son in line, because I have 4 kids, he is quite the introvert, massive introvert. Like, that's just who he is. So he's not going to put himself around a lot of people until he's like, he's pretty ready, and he's not going to put himself out there. And in addition, once he does need alone time just to recharge. So I, as a parent, have to, one, understand how my child's brain works and what he needs, that alone time is actually essential for him in order to recharge, to be social, so that I'm not, too on him about being alone. But then I also have to step up and say, this is a kid that has trouble socializing. And I can let him figure it out on his own and see what he does with that. Or I can step in and give him a little bit of help. And I have chosen to step in and give him a little bit of help. So we talked about he takes the bus to school this year for the first time. And there's been a couple of times that a female has come and sat next to him. Now, he goes to an all-boys Catholic school. So to have one of the girls from the neighboring Catholic school who take the same bus come and sit with him is a big deal. Like, he doesn't get to see girls too often. So he's like, a girl came and sat by me today. And I'm like, awesome. What did you do? And he's like, nothing. I was terrified. Like, girls are scary, Mom. And I'm like, no. Okay, let's not talk to the girl. But the next time any girl sits next to you, then just compliment her. And don't compliment her on her looks, because she'll take it as like you're hitting on her. Compliment her on anything else, her backpack, a cool sticker she has on her bag, anything. And all you're going to do is, with as much confidence as you can muster, just say, I like your backpack. And that's it. Then you're not going to talk to her anymore. Just start with that one word, and that's all you're going to say. And we'll see what happens. Very low, and I'm going to start, scaffolding this to help him talk to girls eventually. Because in his mind, that girl only sat next to him because, and it was just probably true, okay? He was the least bad option, for her to sit next to a stranger, right? So some girl went on the bus, saw that it's pretty full, looked at my son and said, this guy is the least weird looking or whatever, this guy seems safe or whatever, and then decided to sit next to him, So he sees that. He knew. He's like, she just picked me because I was the least bad option. Well, maybe. But let's take advantage of that situation, son. Let's talk to a girl, And so I feel like we need to kind of sometimes give our kids a push depending on their personality disposition. My first son, no way. I didn't have to do that at all. That kid is hey, how are you? Throwing out his hand and, and he doesn't need that help from me. This one, he does, because I don't want him to be isolated. And he doesn't know he's kind of socially awkward. And that's okay. I want to help him through that, but in a way that's non-invasive. And I got to figure out how to do that over some time with still giving him the space to grow. But again, the whole point is not how I'm going to do it, because I don't even know how I'm going to do it. It's that I know that I need to do it. And that by doing that, I'm going to help him so that he doesn't get into this spiral of being one of those lonely boys that thinks that he has to swipe right 200 times and gets, demoralized if somebody ghosts him. I don't want that for him. I need to start building up his self-confidence about who he is right now as a parent. Now, one of the things that the video does say that
wait.
Okay, go ahead.
I got to give you props, okay? Because that is exactly what I'm talking about. You got to give your kid support. You recognize who your kid is. You're not trying to change them.
No.
You're just saying like, hey, I'm trying to help you because these are the social interactions that you're going to have in real life. The fact that you told them like, hey, look, don't compliment her on her looks. Compliment her on anything else but her looks. Why? Because you don't want your son to be that 22-year-old when he's out, out and about and he's in Denver hanging out. And it's like, oh man, I love and it's like a body part or it's like something of her looks, because then he comes off as a creep, and you're teaching him this. He's hearing it from you and he's realizing, okay, even for everyday casual conversation, this is safe. This is okay to talk about. I don't want to alienate the person I'm talking to. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. A lot of these kids don't get those conversations. So when they have those interactions with ladies or with another person that they're interested in, they don't get the results they want. Why? Because they probably say some weird shit. Okay, I'm just being honest. They probably say like, oh my God, and or they don't know how to react to a girl, so they're just there staring and like, oh yeah, whatever,
I hate to say it, but these are probably, I don't know, I'm speculating, but these are probably the same young boys that think that the dick pics are what women want.
Yes. And again, it goes to, so two things on that. When the guys send those pics, they send them because you know what? It probably worked at one point. Because like I said, there's a woman that out there for you that probably likes stuff like that. There's a traditional woman. There's probably also a couple women maybe they like that stuff.
Sure.
And they hit on one, so now they think all of them are that way. No, not at all. And so you don't want that awkwardness. You don't want that craziness on a text. And you're showing your son. And so I just wanted to stop you there because I wanted to commend you for that, because that's exactly what parents need to do. They need to recognize, hey, my kid is great at this, but maybe they're not that great at this. Let me help them out with this. Or you know what, my kid is doing really well with this, but they can improve a little bit like this. Let me help them out. You're not changing them who they are, but you're preparing them for future whenever they need to have those interactions. Because again, they're going to have those interactions. You don't want them to come off as a creep. The best thing you could do is prepare them for those interactions. So kudos to you, Kristina. That was a great example of what you're supposed to do and what all these other parents need to be doing before the kids end up going into this incel culture.
Yeah, that is true. Now, one of the things that I did agree with the video is that in order to build the self-confidence up of any person, but where in this case our young boys, you need to put them into things and have them find something that they're good at. That's really important to build a kid's self-confidence. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be video games. They're a great video game player. It could be art. It could be talking to people, whatever they're interested, but to find something that they're good at so they can hone a skill and feel confident in it. That's like their foundation of confidence. And then you can build from there. But just like the video said, boys are actually girls too. Schools have taken away the so many subjects that used to give some kids self-confidence, like woodshop, and even our art classes are starting to dissipate. The only thing that schools have kept that's very, let's say, masculine for specifically for boys is really like that sports, like playing football and, but that's only such a small percentage of boys that were going to be good at that, like that, and all the rest of these places, like, because schools where kids learn and explore and figure out what they like and don't like, it's all been taken away. And we're not, even myself, I'm not taking my kid to wood shopping classes to see if he likes it. Like, we just don't do that as much as parents anymore. So my point is that even though I agree with that part in the video, that this is a contributor, all taking all that stuff away for the downward spiral of these young men, it's another hole that parents have to feel. We got to figure out how to build confidence in our young boys so they're not what the video is talking about.
I agree. There's so many things out there that society has changed and that has removed that really kind of takes away a lot of outlets and also a lot of growth and expression from both women and men, but particularly, young boys. You mentioned some of those courses, right? Like wood shop and mechanics, auto mechanics. And this, I remember that in my high school. And I remember a lot of the kids love those classes. That's where their classes are. That's another thing that really, I think it's maybe occurring, but still not really accepted, where like we let our kids go into these trades and into vocational programs and not push college so hard, because maybe that's what they want to do. Maybe they want to be welders. They want to be plumbers. They want to be carpenters. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh man, they'll make so much money.
Oh, they do. No, they make a ton of money,
Yeah.
but the thing is that we've conditioned our kids to like, hey, you got to go to 4-year school. You got to go to a university or a college or this and that. And so we take that away from them as well, where, these mechanical abilities and these aptitudes that a lot of young men may have aren't necessarily available to them, or they don't get the support from that. It's a totally different thing if your mom and dad are like into it and like, oh, you're going to UT, or University of Texas, and you're going to, do this and do that. But then you're like, yeah, I kind of want to do HVAC. I really want to work with my hands and this and that. And then your parents say, oh, no, you're going to get a 4-year degree. You take away those kind of options. You take away those kind of things. We really need to be a little bit more open, especially with our young men, to let them explore and find out what they really want to do. And honestly, get that respect back for those trades, for those vocational training, for those types of works that we call quote unquote blue collar, but that really pays well, that can end up being a very exciting future, and that can really provide, a outlet for creativity, expression, and growth for young men. Because at the end of the day, if we push our kids to something they don't want to do, guess what? They're not going to do it. And they're just going to waste their time in something that maybe you're trying to fulfill, but really it's not fulfilling for them. So I totally agree with you, Kristina. I think there's also kind of that pivoting in society, in the educational system, that occurred and now needs to kind of bring it back, where we go back to those type of trainings and that the acceptability of the trades and vocational training and so forth.
You bring up an excellent point, and I'm just going to reiterate it so that the big picture here, because what you're really saying is parental expectations affects this also. And if we're expecting one thing and our kid doesn't want to meet that expectation because they're just doing it for us and not really for themselves, that contributes to this lonely, sad, depressed boy that we're talking about. So it's like, as we see it, like there's the video itself was like, let's blame technology. They're isolating themselves. And really what we're saying in this podcast today is, parents have a role in this. We could help our kids get out of that. We could not have expectations that don't align with, their expectations, because all of that's going to contribute. And we can help our kids get out of that so we don't have one of these lonely boys that the video is talking about.
100% agree with you. I think I'll add one last comment. when the Uvalde shootings happened, where a young man murdered, I believe it was about over 20 kids and teachers. My son immediately said, like, to me, I remember clearly this conversation. He said to me, he goes, "What a nutcase, man! Like, that guy's crazy." And I told my son, I said, "Hey, man, like, you need to be careful what you said. You know, that's not really cool." He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Look, man, you don't know what that kid went through. I'm not trying to justify what he did, but you don't know what he went through." And he goes, "Well, what do you mean? There's nothing that he can go through that will, make him do that." I said, "I'll tell you this much, man. You don't see that because you have privilege. I listen to you. When you have problems, I listen to you. If you ever have like depression, if you ever have some type of feeling that you already know that you can come to me to talk about it. Like, I'm not gonna sit down and like scold you or like tell you like, hey, don't be a little, whatever, toughen up or whatever. You can talk to me. Then you also have Diaz, because my sister was there with us as well as my mom. I said, you got your Diaz, you got Tia right here, you even got your grandma. And if you got a problem and you needed to talk to somebody, you got everybody. And more importantly, they're open. Like, there's an open door there. So that young man lived with his grandma. Maybe even she wasn't open to, listening to him. So I told my son, I said, look, nothing makes it right. Okay. He shouldn't have done that shit. But at the end of the day, we can't be judging him either in the sense of like, oh, he's crazy, or he's, this and that, because maybe he didn't have the support that you have. And you need to really think about that and say how lucky you are to have that support, that you can talk to us about things, and that things you won't grow with resentment, that you won't let something just kind of fester, that your outlet becomes something like a tragedy. And I got to tell you, my son took that to heart, and he really understood what I meant by that. He goes, "Yeah, you're right. I get it now." And to the point that a few months later, my son he got separated from his job there at Subway. That he came to me and he was like, man, I really like this job. I'm sorry, Dad. I feel like a failure and this and that. And I thought, man, don't worry about it, man. It's a job. We good. We're going to figure this out. I told him at that moment, I said, hey, man, like, it's okay. You're supported here, And I think he understood that kind of brought it full circle, because he then said, he's like, yeah, you're right. You're right about a lot of things. And that made sense. And I'm glad I can come to you. So anyways, my whole point with sharing all that is, when you were talking earlier about emotional support and providing that, as parents, we got to do that for our kids. We got to be there for our kids, and they got to know that they can come to us without judgment, that they understand that we're a safe space, that we can talk to us, so that we can also share with them and guide them like you're doing with your son, with your kids, so that they understand how important it is to behave in a certain way, that, proper etiquette and knowing how to handle these interactions. And more importantly, I think, even handle their own feelings and their own emotions.
Yes, that's perfect. I mean, that's really how we should end this podcast, because that's it. We have the power as parents to help our kids, and we just need to take in that little effort, and we need to create that good relationship, create that connection with our kids, so they'll listen to us. Because if you don't have connection, they won't listen. But all of that is so important. And I think, yeah, I'd like to leave this as a bottom line is, we have some say in this. If you see that you have a son that is going in that direction of the video of this lonely young boy, you can do something. And it's just baby steps, little tiny things, every day, to help build that connection with him, help him with a little piece of advice. They don't want to hear a lecture. I didn't tell my son to do all these things. I said, one thing, go just make a compliment. And this is the kind of compliment you want to make. That's it. Try that. Mm-hmm. Start so small, so small, so that it's not overwhelming, intimidating. She's telling me what to do. No, see what happens. Let me know. And then act like it's not a big deal, because then he'll come back and you can give him a little bit more and a little bit more. And we have that power as parents. And how fortunate is that? So thanks, Rodrigo. This was a really good episode. Thank you for listening today. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And don't forget, the Impactful Parenting Podcast is an extension of the Impactful Parent community. Go to the Impactful Parent website and download the free Impactful Parent app so you don't miss a parenting tip that can help you and your family. Thanks for listening today. So go to theimpactfulparent.com and see you next episode.